Hello, hello everybody, and welcome, and good evening. Tervetuloa kaikille. Now I am hearing my voice from my computer. Okei, kiitos kaikille ja tervetuloa tähän meidän lähetykseen. So we have here. We are very sorry. This is at the moment a little bit chaotic. We have had a day of silence, and we just had the sharing very profound and important revelations, and that's why we are a little bit like in the different space. We were sharing in the different location. We just arrived here, and we are sorry that according to our draft schedule we are a little bit late. So that is how it's going to be. They might not be, and we are not following this schedule exactly. It is just giving us some kind of directive how we are and how we are doing and what we are going to do. Elikkä vielä suomeksi se, että meillä on koko päivä ollut hiljaisuuden päivä, ja sitten me äsken keskustelimme siitä toisessa paikassa ja olemme vasta tulleet tähän temppeliin ja olemme ikään kuin vähän joka paikassa mielessämme, mutta me yritämme nyt keskittäytyä. So what is the point now that we are thinking to talk about the silence, and Michael have been collecting some thoughts and text quotations about silence, so we just start to read them, I suppose so. Or Michael, what is your idea?
Well,
Eli me aloitamme, Michael on kerännyt tuohon.
94 pages of this. So, any place we start, we will certainly not finish. But there's certain things we can begin to read, especially the paragraphs in which the word silence, silenced. Let's see, how many do we have?
So just in Finnish, we are not going to translate everything. Maybe every now and then I just try to say some synthetic idea if I do have any ideas about in Finnish also. Eli tätä me emme sitten käännä, vaan ajattelin näin, ehkä siellä täällä koitan sanoa jonkun yhteenvedon asioista, mitä keskustelemme.
So, we can simply begin. There's one paragraph that I particularly want to see read. But this is...
Michael, one thing is that I just want to point you out what were the thoughts, the key thoughts that we were meditating today.
Right, that's a good idea.
So we had for ourselves one thought was about the power of silence, and the second thought was according to Tibetan, the silence of the loving heart. So the silence of the loving heart, according to the master, is about that what is like chasing away all the negativity, all that what is worthless in our thoughts and thought building, and in our speech and speech building. Eli meillä oli kaksi tällaista avainajatusta tälle päivälle, hiljaisuuden voima ja sitten voima, rakastavan sydämen hiljaisuus. Ja tämä oli tiibettiläisen ajatus siitä, mikä sitten saattaa kaiken negatiivisuuden loppumaan sekä puheessa että ajatuksissa. So, Michael, are you ready to go?
I'm just about ready to go. I'm just trying to think, am I actually sending this to anybody? And it would be nice if it were the case. Because I have some... I'm receiving something, and but I have a feeling that maybe some people are not getting it. So, okay, anyway, yes, and remember that if you're receiving a small image in the lower right-hand corner, you can make it a big image. It looks like a, what can I say? It looks like a square with 4 angles, and you can make it bigger if you would like to. Okay, so look, in this first paragraph, the Tibetan talks about Egypt, and you know, when you think about Egypt, it's a long time ago, maybe 70,000 years ago or more. I mean, we have very small idea about what the Egyptian, the ancientness of Egypt is. It's really the second root race of the second subrace of the 5th root race. It's very old. So he said, this is interesting, and this little paragraph is about the impressiveness of silence and what the real magic is as it's coming. And he says, you know, obviously we can't read 94 pages, can we? But he
yes,
says,
we can.
We can, yeah. Okay, All Through the Night. There's an old Welsh hymn called All Through the Night. I would remind you also that in that home of ancient magic, which you call Egypt, notice, which you call Egypt, because it's got some other name in the archives of the masters, the magical work there performed was definitely concentrated upon the producing of physical effects and material results. It was very Vulcan in one way, the 1st ray, the 4th ray, and the 7th ray. Okay, and that the focus of attention of the magician of the day can be seen in, now here's these great things that remain, in the stupendous production of those ancient and gigantic forms, standing silent and still in their pristine magnificence, which today call for the attention of archaeologists and travelers, etc. So there's just something about the presence of these, who even knows how they were built. But the silence of them that harkens back to a time of 70,000, 100,000 years ago, maybe even more, because these sub-races, the Aryan root race has been going for about 1 million years. And the first was the Hindu sub-race, then the Egyptian sub-race, at least, you know, Philip Lindsay elaborates on this, then the Chaldean sub-race, and that was like 450,000 years ago, the Chaldean, and Egypt was before that, or what we call Egypt. So my point is, there's an impressiveness in silence.
I was just, while you were reading this, it brought me to Tibet. We went there with our group, with the Blue Rose Sisters and some brothers, and we went to one ancient temple and the library. I don't remember the city. Do you remember, Eha, the city? What was the name of that city? Or the temple, do you remember? Sakya. Yeah. It was Sakya monastery, and it had this kind of, it was one of those which had been surviving when Chinese people came, and when they were destroying everything in Tibet. But this had these scrolls of ancient text from the bottom to the roof, to giving you some idea. It is, it could be about 7 meters high. I don't know how much it is 7 meters in feet.
21, 22 feet.
And it was just filled. And I happened to have a privilege to go into that library itself. And it was like almost taking my consciousness. I have never had such a sense of presence of the hierarchy like standing silent presence of some ancient root of yes, yeah, is a feeling of that still. It was so magnificent and so incredible of this sacredness. It was like every single scroll was breathing out of that message, the sacred message, and the livingness of the teaching. Even though the present time would be different, but whomever then in the ancient time was one of the continuation of the walking teaching, the presence was still there. So it was just reminding me when Michael was reading this. Michael, are you ready? Or what's going on?
That's the question that all of us have to ask. Am I ready? I just want to just check one thing, because I have this funny feeling that people are not receiving this, even though we're having a good time talking about it.
I am receiving, Michael.
Are you?
I am.
Okay, good. Now it tells me that 9 people. Okay, 10. Okay, very good. Now, in these compilations, you don't hope for continuity from paragraph to paragraph, okay? You don't hope for that. But you can connect them all, and we're talking about initiation now, and one of the things we deal with when we come together here is the possibility of initiation. So silence is involved in that, although DK says a lot of people would be better off if they talked more about the right things. In other words, he says some people have developed the idea that in order to take initiation they must not talk. And then he says that people would do a lot better if they talked about the right things. We're going to deal with that. I think we'll get that far today. Anyway, 30 years passed in the New Testament, and the Jesus, or Jeshua, he grew to manhood and then could take the second initiation. Now notice, manhood, meaning that you are mature and developed when you are taking the second initiation. You're no longer a babe or a child or any of that kind of thing, right? You are developed. So, and he begins his public service. Now today, and this is the little section here. Today, the many who in this life have taken the first initiation, and you know that's going to be millions by the year 2025, are entering the long silence of that symbolic 30 years wherein they too will grow to manhood, personhood, and take the second initiation. Nobody knew about Jesus, nobody. Nobody knew about Jeshua except the people close to him. But at the baptism in the Jordan, he assumed a public role. And that says something about us too, doesn't it? When we're an initiate of the first degree, it takes a long period of inner cultivation before we may be ready to take our message to the people. Now, a lot of DK students, I found, the majority, were facing the second initiation. That's what was possible for them, especially in that life, the next, or the next, that kind of thing, right? Sometimes he told them it would be in the next life. Okay, someone's saying there is no sound. Are you getting any kind of sound, Julia?
Okay.
You know, test.
Yes.
You are getting sound?
Yes, I am getting sound.
Okay, so I don't know, that must be I'm receiving, Julie is receiving, and Ms. Skovgaard says no sound, but check your mute. Ms. Skovgaard, check your mute. So many little things today can go wrong with this technical stuff. I've been buried under it all day. While everyone else was silent, my concrete mind was going yakety-yak, trying to figure out all of these fifth-rate things. But anyway, we innerly cultivate ourselves during the symbolic 30 years between the first and second initiation, between the birth and the baptism. Now, in case you think you have to wait 30 lives to take the second initiation, you don't. There's a place on page 120 where the Tibetan talks about the second initiation. It says it can take place in the very next life or the one following from the first initiation. Now that might be a bit rare. It's more frequent that it is taken over a longer period of time. But it's a silent period of a lot of inner work upon oneself. And that's the way we grow.
Well, I want to add to this what was coming up when we were sharing about our experiences. It seems to be for all of us this realization that one should be giving to oneself more silent time, that actually there is a real need within to practice that and create in our own home rhythm this kind of silence periods. That is how the soul can reach us, and it seems to be a lot that we are gaining from that.
Yes, I mean, silence, the Tibetan is so careful about what he calls occult silence. It's just not exactly what we might think it to be. It has a lot more to do with thinking the right thing at the right time in the right place and not getting all mixed up. In other words, for some people, you never talk about the ashram. And if you go into the ashram, you never talk about what's going on in the kitchen, for instance, or whatever. The mundane things. Everything is kept properly segregated so it remains pure. And this is what he's talking about. We'll get to that point. So anyway, this is the second initiation, control of the emotional nature, because we know how often we talk under the prompting of our solar plexus. It's like a Mars-Saturn or Mars-Earth kind of thing. We feel the impulse to talk and we start talking. But do we talk in a way that is purposeful? Do we talk in a way that really is advancing the plan, or do we just talk? See, now, in the beginning, the Earth rules the throat center, but later Saturn rules the throat center, and still later Uranus, the seventh-ray magical planet, rules the throat center. Yeah, dear.
Can I read something from Tibetan? It fits to here. He is talking about the control of speech, and this is what I was reading already in the morning as well. The control of speech, which has often been your goal, but seldom your achievement. And remember that the most powerful factor in the control of speech is a loving heart. Wild and fearful talk, hateful gossip, cruel innuendo, suspicion, the ascribing of wrong and wicked motives to personal and peoples, and the divergencies of attitude which have separated the many different nations in the world are rampant today and have brought the world to its present distressing situation. It is so easy to drift into the same habits of speech and thought which we find around us, and to discover ourselves participating in attack and the spirit of hate. Guard yourselves strenuously against this, and say nothing which could inflame hate and suspicion in connection with any race, any person, any group, and any leaders of groups and nations. You will have to guard yourselves with care, so that even in defense of that which you may personally or nationally approve, you do not find yourselves full of hate and breaking the law of love, the only law which can truly save the world. Perhaps the key to your success along this line will be the silence of a loving heart.
Those are wonderful thoughts. Well, there's so many beautiful things said here, you know. Basically, what we'll have to do is send this compilation to you, or if you are part of the Ageless Wisdom compilation group, you can just pull the compilation right off of, what is it? It's going to be Yahoo, isn't it? It's going to be Yahoo. I'm sorry, I'm kind of adjusting my microphone here. Sorry if it's a little bit scratchy. Okay, so going on a little bit. From Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 1, DK is talking about the experiment that he's undertaking. And there were other experiments that were being undertaken by other masters trying to train groups, you know, so that they could do better and advance into the ways of the New Age. So this is also for me an experiment, he says. For those of us who are members of some degree of the hierarchy, as every true disciple is actually, are necessarily changing the old ways and adapting the old methods to the newer circumstances and to the advance of evolution. Here he actually makes a joke. This is a rare occasion with DK. He says, many tried disciples and aspirants, should I have said tired brother of mine, for I surmise that both words are true, are to be subjected to experiments which will involve the ancient, the application of the ancient rules in a modern way. And then he goes on and talks about these experiments. And every one of these wonderful paragraphs could be discussed for a half hour, okay, you know, but we're not exactly doing that. There is no condition of physical peace and of quiet wherein the soul may be invoked, in which potent in results, in which work potent in results may be achieved in the calm of silence and the rest of what the Hindu calls samadhi, complete detachment from the calls of the body and the emotions. That's not how it is today. You're just not getting that wonderful samadhi peace and quiet and the calm we all need. We may take it eventually a little bit. The work has to go forward in clamor. Glamour and clamor, you know, what can I say? Clamor is a lot of noise, you know. And if we can preserve the inner silence, which is attunement with the presence of God, or the presence of the soul, presence of whatever, if we could preserve the presence, preserve the sense of synthesis, preserve the sense of being in the middle of all the clamor, even when you lose your cats, as we were doing today. I'm afraid I didn't preserve my inner silence. Okay, anyway, they've come back. You'll be happy to know the cat came back. All right. So anyway, we have to learn how to do all this in the middle of all the noise. Here it is. The point of peace must be found in the midst of riot. You know what a riot is? Out there on the street, everybody's going crazy. The point of peace, and the prodigal son, he went forth into the lower worlds, and he wasted his life in riotous living. Okay, so that's the story of the personality gaining control and just doing what it wants to do. So the point of peace must be found in the midst of riot. Wisdom must be attained in the very midst of intellectual turmoil. And the work of cooperation with the hierarchy on the inner side of life must proceed amidst the devastating racket of modern life in the great cities. Hear the horns honking, the cab just almost hit you, you just got splashed as the water went by, you know. I've lived in New York City or worked there for a long time, and well, my solution to the whole problem was listening to Cosmic Fire as I walked 2 miles from the Port Authority every day, back and forth, 2 miles every way, listening to Cosmic Fire. And I don't know how many times I almost got hit, but it would have been a good way to go. All right. The devastating racket of modern life. Such is your problem, and such is my problem as I seek to help you, aid you. So silence isn't just having this wonderful Shangri-La retreat where nothing bothers you. You have to deal with it right here in the middle of everything. Right. So to you. Anything there?
No, no.
Okay, now here's, you know, I don't know. I'm the Tibetans' fan club here. I just think that what he has written and what he intends to write, well, first with Blavatsky, then with Bailey, and now in another 6 years, 7 years, he's going to write more. Who knows for how long? Is it another 30 years of work that he's going to do, or is it longer? He's going to write during the transition phase out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. 2117 is the time when the Aquarian age really, really, really begins, and the Tibetan is going to write his third installment of his teaching coming up in starting in another 7 years. So our job now is to assimilate and apply as much as we can of what he has given. And that's a big job, okay? Now, he's telling how people have to really look at themselves, watch themselves very closely, interiorly. And so when you have your notebook, or what do you call it now, a tablet, or some kind of little pad, or whatever you got there, too, you always say, now get your notebooks and say, dear, this is the modern age. People are hanging out with tablets. Okay.
I have notebook.
Okay, and they even call them notebooks on top of it. So be very observant about yourself. The seeing of the light in the head comes in this category. You got to make note of it. Now, its brilliance should be noted. Its growth and dimming, you know, because a lot of times we are like approaching points of light, then we get dim, and then we get bright, and then we get dim. And that's what an aspirant does. Now I'm excited. Now I'm not. Now I'm excited. Now I'm not. You know, and that's what we look like to the hierarchy. We have to be a steadily approaching beam of ever brightening light. All right, but then he says, excuse me, you hear all this stuff going on?
You all should be coming here to see this.
This, I'll tell you. This is falling
I'm
off my head. I look like it's something that the aliens brought. Okay, wait a second.
I'm very sorry that we cannot send the film.
All right, there we go. There we go. All right, so anyway, he says, make note of, oops. Oh, that's funny, isn't it? Excuse me, I just had the wire hanging down across my nose. When I know that there's a better way, I just know there's a better way. All right, so anyway, excuse me. You know, I'd like you to be able to see this just for a good laugh. All right, so anyway, he says, make note of the voice of the silence when it occurs. Make note of it. Now maybe some of you, you've had a day of silence today, except for the people disturbing your environment, but now you know that that was all planned to see if you could keep your silence in the midst of riot. You know, we're calling the cat and all that, and just try to keep your silence. Anyway, the hearing of the voice of the silence, which is the voice of the soul, but not of the subconscious. The subconscious is what you already lived through long ago. The voice of the soul is new, right? So you listen. So Has the voice of the of soul spoken today? You've had some hours of relative peace and quiet when you're thinking about silence, or maybe thinking about not thinking or whatever. Has the voice of the soul, the voice of the silence, spoken today? Now, I was judging from some of the things that you said earlier when we were in the gazebo there, and I felt that it had, for some of us, except for me, spoken to you in a way that maybe this is the voice of the soul. So you keep, because the interesting thing about the voice of the soul, it might have a little bit to do with correcting your behavior, but after that, it's all about the divine plan. This is interesting. Phase number 1 is correcting what's wrong. Phase number 2 is the divine plan. So we all try to arrive at the registering of messages from the soul of other disciples and world servers, expansions of consciousness which initiate you into the conscious life of God as it manifests through any forms, and the hearing of the note of all being. The note of all beings. Actually, he says the great note of nature is the green note Fa, and no human being could stand to hear it. It would just shatter everything. But anyway, the note of all beings, whatever he means there, and a close study of the third part of the light of the soul, which, by the way, the masters study, also will indicate the type of phenomena which should take place in your spiritual diary. Now, do you have a spiritual diary? I hope so. I have 165 notebooks in storage. I think they're falling apart by now, but I was really serious about this in the days when one was writing with a pen. Okay, now it's a different thing. So anyway, the voice of the silence, and it's an ancient book, isn't it, that Blavatsky translated. She must have known how to do that or gotten some help with that. So the interior life, and not just living the interior life, but noting it carefully about what's really happening, and not just what you'd like to happen, right? Okay. I see Tuya's looking at some good stuff over there on her computer. Unfortunately, I cannot swap that over to you so you could show. I can't do that.
Well, I am preparing for everybody this.
Okay, that'd be nice. Okay, and then, so now we're just going on here. We've done 2 out of 94 pages. It's good. We're just rolling along here. He says, please try to contact me at the time of the full moon. Well, you say, that was a long time ago, and maybe Master Decay isn't looking out anymore, but I'll bet he is. For the 12 hours before the full moon, he wants us to approach as a group. Okay. So keep the exact moment of the full moon, he says. And it may not always be possible for you to make your approach at the exact hour of the full moon, but he says the door really opens at that time, so try then. Though you can at that hour always silently and interiorly lift up your heart and eyes to the eternal. What is the eternal? Well, the Great Mother slept for 7 eternities. Is eternity forever, or is it a time span? That's the question. In the secret doctrine, it seems like an eternity has a time span, a certain kind of cycle. So anyway, at the time of the full moon, look, we are largely, we folks, we are silent workers. We do a lot in the silence, and we say, well, can that be any good? Can that be effective? And it really can be effective, and must be effective today, when the triangles can sort of save humanity from itself and all of its glamorous ways. It's done in the silence. So, and we have to get used to that idea. But at some hour during the preceding 12 hours, you can make your approach. At some hour during the preceding 12 hours, you can make your approach. When you do so rightly, you will find me waiting. But of course, you don't go with all your problems. You go with the will to express the divine plan. Then we find him waiting, right? Go to your work with clear vision, a loving heart, and an understanding love. Much can then be accomplished. So we work in the silence. It really helps. Okay, okay, Tuya, do you want to say anything there, or you?
No.
Okay. Just want to, because I keep on, and I'm hoping, yeah, I finally found the right link. It told me some people are watching. That's very nice. Okay.
Yes, we all are very happy that you are there,
Yes.
behind the scenes.
Yes. Oh, that'll be the day.
Or maybe we are behind the scenes.
But you know, that's a profound thought. Behind the scenes. See, he says, do you know this English word, phantom? It's like a ghost, right? And then related to that word is phantasmagoria. Phantasmagoria. And that just means all the forms, the movement, all of the images, everything that's happening. He says you really have to stand back from all the phantasmagoria, including associated persons. He considers persons to be part of the phantasmagoria. Not souls, but persons. So, you know, that's a very detached point of view, right? Maybe the Buddha really had that. The Buddha was a, I don't know, 6th-degree initiate, probably, I do believe. And he really knew how to be detached. He really did. Except, well, this is the thing, you know, when it came to choosing the right path on the way of higher evolution, then he didn't know how to be detached. Because he loved humanity so much that he stayed with humanity for 2,500 or, I don't know, 4,000 years longer than he was supposed to. And, you know, if I ever think I'm attached to my cat, then I just think of the Buddha, attached to humanity, and it's okay to be attached to your cat. Okay. So, going on. Well, let's see. Disciples don't like people to see into them so much. That's the problem. You become a member of the group, and you are immediately subjected to what DK calls the group gaze. Everybody, each sees and knows the villainy of each, and yet there is, with that great revelation, no turning back, no spurning of each other, no shakiness upon the path. The road goes forward in today. So, but the group gaze, and he says, but people, they demand that others don't look at them. And they have equally demanded reticence about their personality lives, about their mistakes and failings. They don't want it discussed, and have demanded it more loudly than the permission to be silent about their soul life. Now that's an interesting idea. I want to be silent about my soul life. Oh, but even more, I want you to be silent about my personality. Don't tell me what I'm doing wrong, you know what I mean? So we don't have real detachment yet. This is where silence is not so good. Sometimes silence is really good, and sometimes it's not fitting, you know. Now, this was written back in the 30s, okay? But then, look, we've had all of these group phenomena going on in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all that kind of thing, where people really got together and told the truth about themselves and listened to the truth about others. Look at the Oprah show. Look who goes on the Oprah show. Look at what they say. That would just be impossible at the time that this was written. But people loosened up and decided to tell the truth. So they no longer demand complete silence about their personality life. It says the desire to be quiet about your own personality life is usually based on pride, on a fear of criticism, on the terror of being laughed at or derided, misunderstood and judged, and these are all unworthy motives. So Okay, so sometimes, like you said, people would be better off if they talked more about the right things and in the right way. So, you know, we'll make sure, Tuya and I, that everybody has this. And I was just talking to Kay, who does a wonderful job in managing so many things, and also this Ageless Wisdom compilation with a lot of things people have contributed to and keep on contributing. And, you know, this compilation is right there on Ageless Wisdom compilations, and you can get it, you know. Matter of fact, I would strongly recommend for those who want to assimilate what the Tibetan is talking about over these next 7 years as much as possible, go to Ageless Wisdom compilations and join at Yahoo Groups, yahoogroups.com, and just download these fantastic compilations. There's just tens of them, hundreds of them, and what DK said, study topically. You know what that means? You can read the book. Very good, very good. We read the book. Very good. And you can't replace reading the book. Or you can read the 700 and something references to Shambhala one after another. And that will give a unique insight to what Shambhala is. Okay, here is... I'm just going along here, you know, obviously. Hey, we've done 3 pages out of 94. Great. All right. So here's the next one on impersonality. First-rate types, they can be impersonal, but it's not necessarily a true spiritual impersonality. Sometimes DK says it's based on a hatred of emotion. There are some first-rate types who are very emotional, but a lot of them really suppress their emotions. Okay. Now here's a question for you. When someone disagrees with you, does it ever happen, or you do not like a person's attitude, ideas, or proposals, what is the first thing you do? Do you love him? Do you keep silent? Do you discuss him with others? Do you endeavor to straighten him out, to put him right? How do you try to do this? This is a big question, isn't it? So, you know, he says, at one point he says, when there is criticism of somebody, and it comes to you, you don't strengthen the criticism. The criticism goes into a dead end. He calls it a cul-de-sac, you know, French term, meaning it's a dead end. It goes no further. But it takes a little while to develop the right attitude there, you know, because we're all too ready to analyze. Well, okay, there's a difference between criticism and analysis. Now, DK says, allow me to analyze your problem for you. He doesn't say, allow me to criticize you right now so you feel really terrible. He calls criticism that dire creator of misery. I always remember that, you know what I mean? You know, I mean, just you want to tear the other person down and there's nothing left. That's not harmless. That's not helpful. That's not putting a possibility for growth. I mean, look, you've got to be able to tell people if you're training them that they could do better. Just imagine that here's a doctor who's an expert surgeon, and he's training young surgeons, and he said, oh, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Just go ahead and cut, you know. I mean, that would not be the way to go. It would be harmful, wouldn't it? So you got to be able to tell the truth, you know. So if you are impersonal, he says, is it the result of training, or is it natural to you? Is it simply self-defense? Or is it the easiest way to attain peace? Or is it a spiritual attainment? See, DK really demands that we question ourselves quite exactly. That's why a lot of people, you know, they would rather study some other teaching, because this nice second-ray master is very tough. He's very tough, you know. I realized that when he said, whip yourself into shape. He said, what? Because he's got a lot of 6-ray, he very zealous in his own way. So I can really identify, with him very much. Okay. Now this is ongoing from Dinah. Dinah 1, as a matter of fact, he said, people have to come into the ashram. We need people in the ashram. So how are you going to do it? He says, train them with Dinah 1, discipleship in the New Age. It will attract them into the ashram. Just think about him. He's writing personal letters to people like you and me who are struggling along on the path, just trying to do better, and he sees with real spiritual discernment what could make things better for us. And he takes the time to do it. So Alice Bailey said, this is very unusual for a master to do this kind of thing, And he will be one of the externalizing masters teaching esoteric healing and psychology particularly, He's very broad. He can do a lot of things, but the healing is his big thing. And, with healing, there's 3 kinds of healing. We usually concentrate on etheric, okay? But part of that third group is emotional psychological healing, and then something that's not practiced very much at all, mental healing. It's almost like, what's your life philosophy, and what is your attitude, and why do you think what you think? And that the race is not quite ready for that, but I think some disciples are ready for that. I mean, do you think illusions and make yourself really unhappy, and then get yourself in an emotional mess because of the thoughts you're thinking? Most diseases are coming from ether or from emotions and not from the mind. Such is humanity at the moment. Okay. So another question here arises. Are there any specific brief rules which should be obeyed? The following might be given, and I would remind you that it is what you are that counts in this work more powerfully than anything else. Have you heard of the author Ralph Waldo Emerson? He was American. They called him the Boston Brahmin. So he was a minister, and he had studied widely, and he was one of the leaders in the transcendentalist movement in the 1840s, along with Henry David Thoreau, and somehow they had this thing about the subtle dimensions of life. And he said, what you are is screaming so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. And I thought, wow, that's a real statement. It's what you are that counts, and what we are is a service or not a service, depending on what we're radiating. Okay, so the controlling factor is harmlessness in thought and word. Now I will, before going on, I will recite, if I can remember it, harmlessness is the expression of the life of the man who realizes himself to be everywhere, who lives consciously as a soul, whose nature is love, whose method is inclusiveness, and for whom all forms are alike. All forms are alike in that they veil and hide the light and are but externalizations of the one infinite being. I find that to be just a fantastic definition of harmlessness, and if you really get into it, he's really saying something there about what state of consciousness we have to be in order to be harmless. Okay, so the controlling factor is harmlessness in what we are, in thought and word. And I suppose deed is just obvious. It all starts with your thoughts. What did Thackeray say? Something like, sow a thought, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap character. Sow character, reap destiny. It all starts with what you think, and it ends up with what happens to you. It starts with thought, and it ends up with your destiny. The astrologers are very fond of that particular statement. Okay, now here we go. Harmlessness in thought and deed. The practice of this with proper observation of what happens when you do it will greatly help all of you. Next comes the refusal to think unkindly or with criticism. And note, he's not talking about the refusal to talk unkindly. That's just like obvious. He's saying the refusal to think unkindly or with criticism. He says something very second ray: be sweet and kind and good. Keep silence and the light will enter in. That this is part of the 15 counsels in white magic, page 473. So the master is saying, be sweet and kind and good. I wonder how first-rate types react to that piece of advice. Keep silence and the light will enter in. Okay, so we don't think unkindly or with criticism. This is essential in connection with those whose minds you seek to impress. This is like working in telepathy. If you're busy criticizing the people you're trying to telepathically impress, it's just not going to work. It's just going to close the door. It's going to slam the door. Now here comes another silence, meaning discretion, carefulness. Silence, complete and unbroken as to what you are doing, is also a vital factor. If I'm a member of a telepathic group and I'm running around saying, oh yeah, we're trying to impress your mind so you can live better, I'm going to stop the whole process right there. Silence, complete and unbroken as to what you are doing, is a vital factor. That's why he was so careful. He didn't let out the names of the people who were in the groups, so that there was no gossip about them and all that. He kept discretion. They didn't use their names when writing publicly. Okay, the utterance of words in connection with this most subtle and confidential work, this is telepathic work, or even discussion of the work with a fellow disciple, can shatter the delicate thought form which you are attempting to build. So here is silence as a protective mechanism. It can render the work of weeks abortive. You've worked for weeks and it messes it all up. A balanced attitude in relation to those in power throughout the world must also be cultivated. You know how everybody's screaming these days, you're horrible, political, bombs are being thrown at each other. He says a balanced attitude must be cultivated. They need above all else the inspiration which can be brought to them from the hierarchy. He says, try to help inspire the leaders rather than criticize them. Okay, I'm going to just stop here for a moment and maybe stop for good. Is there anything any question or thought that you all have? And unfortunately, because of the microphone setup, I would have to kind of repeat it as you would ask it or say it. Anything? Yes, dear?
Well, it's 9 o'clock.
It's time to stop, isn't it?
We are little by little finishing for today.
Yes, okay. But so my question is, to the huge number who is in the Temple of Silence at the moment, the great crowd of distinguished individuals, have you anything that you would like to say or question as a result of our discussion about silence up to this moment? Or are you going to prove that silence really works? Yeah. Excuse me. I mean, it's very hard for a third-rate type to be silent. Second rays have a much easier time with it, I think so. Because the third ray rules the throat center, and the sixth ray loves to preach. So he talks about the psychopathology of different ray types. He says that first and fifth ray types make themselves so isolated they become untouchable. He says that second, fourth, and sixth ray types brood upon things until they release the brooding, either in some wonderful thing or some violent crime. And third and sixth ray types just are convinced they have to impress upon you everything they think. So they just, they just preach until you're dead. So these are various, and psychopathology. I have a friend that once was, we lived in the same place when we were like 3 or 5 years old. He became a famous psychiatrist, and at Yale University. And I noticed that he was working with obsessive compulsive neurosis. You know what it is? You're walking on the sidewalk, step on a crack, you'll break your mother's back, so you go over the line. It's like, I have to circle 3 times and spit on my fingers before I can go in the house. It's people's crazy rituals to protect themselves, obsessive compulsive neurosis. And what ray do you think that's involved with?
7th.
Yes. The 7th ray. Yeah, the 7th ray. So I thought, that's very interesting. There's just so many wonderful things you said, and we've covered 3 pages here, which so at this rate, let's see, 3 times 30, 3 times 20 to 30. Okay, if we're here a month and we read every day this particular compilation, we're going to finish it before it finishes us. Okay, so is there anything that anybody would like to say? It sounds, kind of contradictory. Say about silence. Mention about silence. Silence is the synthesis. It really is. It's like the color white. It just absorbs everything. I notice when we're doing the glamour meditation, you're supposed to have 10 minutes of silence. So I usually give people about 2 minutes. But the growth of power in that 2 minutes, whoa! You just, hey, everybody's just coming together, and they're not breaking it up with a lot of words.
One experience of today was that because we had to also concentrate some other things, but the group was in silence, so one can sense that it breaks through the ethers the way that when I was in the distance, so I could still sense the power, how it is generating. That's why I'm thinking about all of those advanced ones, the great ones. You can be within their, or with the presence of theirs, how it is affecting us. But even here, down to earth, those who are really practicing, it comes through. It breaks through. So,
yeah.
Even we are very, very small group, thinking about the power still, thinking about the people who are practicing silence in the bigger groups, like when we think about the Kala Chakra initiation, it was all the time reciting. How do you pronounce reciting? Reciting the mantras. And we were talking earlier that the silence is not per se that one is restraining from talk. It is that inner place within us which is open to that. In my experience was with one own self, that it comes through, so one can recite and be still in silence. It's the inner being within us, and it's very blessing and it's very healing, very easy in one sense to think about that, how much we can make changes in the world, just practicing silence, or keep the silence, or be in silence, be silence, and we can continue however to express it, but it is very powerful.
He says some wonderful. I mean, you know, I don't know if we get to how much more we'll get to do than 3 pages of 94. But he says, "Go your way with strength and silence, and do that which your soul demands." Whoa, that's just straight talk, isn't it? And you may be having a lot of fights within your inner nature, but it's not that everybody has to see it. Your personal release lies in the production of harmony through conflict. This person probably has a Ray 4 mind. And your best technique is to produce this harmonizing influence within your environment as a result of your inner conflict silently waged in the shrine of the mind. Just words of wisdom, you know.
So let us have that on the screen, and let us all be in silence 5 minutes. Would it be okay, Michael?
That's fine. I want to talk. No, it's fine. It's,
so, Michael, can you have that?
I'm having it on the screen. I'm making it big. Is that the one you're talking about there?
Whatever good idea there is.
Well,
the next one, the vow of silence, which all disciples take, must still be kept, but the power to share knowledge, experience, and the gains of illumination must at the same time be cultivated. In the light which streams forth from the center of light, all that concerns the personality and service must stand revealed.
Yeah. This is just wonderful stuff. It just makes me want to read the Tibetans' books.
So if we keep that, because you know this has been a long day and tomorrow it's very demanding day, maybe I will just say that we will start again at 8 a.m. Finnish time. It's 5 a.m. GMT. And we start with the meditation, then we go into the teaching of the first initiation. We dedicate tomorrow, that day, for the first initiation. So we welcome all of you with us, and now I wish that we would just go into silence.
I just want to say about the videos. If you're in the Blue Rose Sisterhood, I tend to be sending you the videos that we are making.
You mean the recordings from us?
Recordings here,
right.
Video recordings.
Right.
But we will also have our group, our supportive communication group, be sending out the link to everybody. And if you go to YouTube, which is now our new platform, you will find these. Let's see, what are we calling this? In Blue Rose Initiation, or Initiation Mystery Week, something like that. The Blue Rose Initiation Blue Rose Mystery Week. If you look under that, if you go to Moria Federation Esoteric Education on YouTube, you will find all of our playlists, a lot of stuff. You know, we got about 2,000 programs there. And you will find these latest programs of our meditations and discussions. And you know, some people have been having a little trouble with a link here or there. At least you'll be able to get this and listen to it at your leisure. So I'm just telling you now, YouTube has become very important for us. But for other things, we still use Makara and go to Makara because there are many, many programs to be found there.
Okay, and now we will go into 5 minutes silence. And aligning with our group, with love. Ja nyt aloitamme hiljaisuuden, keskittäytyen sydämeen ja virittäytyen ryhmään rakkaudella. Pidämme 5 minuutin hiljaisuuden. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Dearest brothers and sisters, thank you very, very much being with us. Thank you for today. Rakkaat siskot ja veljet, kiitämme jälleen seurastanne. Kiitos, että olitte mukanamme. And we welcome all of you for tomorrow's program. We start 5 a.m. GMT. Ja toivotamme tervetulleeksi kaikki huomiseen ohjelmaan. Aloitamme kello 8 Suomen aikaan. So namaste from here. Do you want to say something, Michael?
Well, study hard. That's my mantra, I guess.
Right. And let us build the chalice together. And if you just happen to have some kind of inspiration, welcome. Come and join with us here in Finland. It's really beautiful weather. Sun is just still above the horizon. It's totally light here. It is worth of coming here. Beautiful summer evening. But now,
Okay.
bye-bye from
Bye,
Finland.
everybody, and from everybody here in the Temple of Silence. Bye-bye. We'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow anyway. See you then. Bye-bye.